Hey, my name is Rebecca. I want to welcome you back to the Inside My Own Headspace podcast. Thank you for joining for episode 3. A little change in background today. I'm going to work on getting a little bit more creative with this. Better background, mic moving forward, that sort of thing. Improve it a little bit for you guys. So last time, and I went a little bit deeper into my story, kind of a little bit more about me, how I kind of got to where I am today after my struggles with anxiety and depression. And I started touching on a little bit at the end of the last podcast, kind of about how I cope with it today, what things trigger me, how I manage it now in a healthier way than I did before. So I feel like that was a good start to kind of pick up onto the next podcast, is how I deal with it now. To say I don't have any anxiety and depression anymore would be a lie. I really think that if it's something that you've struggled with before, it's probably something that's always going to be in like your chemical makeup in your body. I don't think it's something that you can just totally shut off or just completely ever step away from. I think there's a lot of things that can help manage it. Doctor, prescriptions, talking to a therapist, talking to friends, talking to family, journaling, there's a million and one things that can help you with it. But I really don't think there's anything that ever just totally makes it go away. I don't think that's possible. I think there's a lot of ways that we can not have it be so great, and things that kind of help us work through it. But personally, I just don't think it's one of those things that you can just shut off and just totally grow away from, and it just completely disappears. Maybe I just haven't found that part of my journey yet. But right now I think it's something that will always be a small part of me. Even if it is a small part, I think it's something that'll just kind of always be there. So it's taken me a long time to get to this point. I was in middle school and I'm 31 now. So it's been, 18 years of this and maybe more. I'd say the last 6 or so years is when I really hit my rock bottom and then also started coming out of that. So I want to say, I think for probably the last 4 years, has been the biggest, changes to my mental and emotional sides of things. As I've mentioned before, and I keep mentioning only because it's a big part of my journey, is fitness. So I, about 4 years ago, I guess, I started working at a gym. I was working at the front desk. I was kind of in between jobs. I had left my last job, this is probably 5 years ago, and I didn't really know where to turn. I was sort of working out. It was making me, it was sort of a coping mechanism, but just, it wasn't in a healthy way. I would go out on a binge after drinking, and then I would take a fat burner, and then I would go live on the stepper the next day. My relationship with fitness 6 years ago was very unhealthy. I think you can have healthy and unhealthy addictions. I think my addiction and thrive off of fitness now is much healthier than it was back then. I didn't know the damage I was doing to myself internally and externally by drinking and eating all this food and then just going and living on the cardio machine for an hour. I thought you just outwork your bad diet, right? It doesn't work that way. But mentally it made me feel better. I felt like crap after I ate all that food, and then I came back into the gym and I was like, oh, I feel better now. I just burned that pint of Ben & Jerry's off. So I'm good, right? And I didn't know any different. I thought that was okay, it was balance. Or so I thought. I'll sweat that alcohol out from the night before. It's a balance. But it wasn't really a balance. It wasn't a very healthy way to do things. And at this point, I had you know, hit my rock bottom, and it was like, okay, well, now I need a job. I need somewhere to work. What am I going to do? And I kind of had that passion for fitness. So my mom actually was a member at the gym at this time. So she took me in and was like, my daughter's kind of transitioning. She needs a job. Like, she'll work the front desk. Basically, I was like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I need to work. I need a job. I was paying off my interlock at this point. I was, fighting that DUI burden. So I was like, I need something. I gotta make money. Working for my parents was just not cutting it. And so I started working at the desk. I started meeting people. I started interacting with people. And then I started training. I got my spin certification. I started teaching classes. I started training clients one-on-one. And I realized that I had a passion for it. I enjoyed helping other people. And with that, I then started on with my own coach. Some years before, I had talked to a lady who was in bodybuilding, and I was like, I'm not cut out for that. I'll never make it. And she saw something in me that I never saw in myself. And then I was ready to I was like, all right, I need structure. I need someone to hold me accountable because I can't hold myself accountable. I was working through the stages of getting sober and working through my rock bottom, but I didn't have anyone holding me accountable. I was still kind of just floundering out of the water. I don't know which way's up. I don't know where I want to go. I want to do this, but I don't know about that. And just having no real direction. So I thought if I had someone to be like, okay, here's what you need to do in the gym. Here's what you need to eat. This is your goal. Let's start working towards it. That it would give me that accountability and that structure that I so much craved. I needed that structure to hold me together and tell me okay, this is it. I could follow the plan, but I didn't know what that plan was. I signed in with my first coach. And I think that journey of, honing in on my nutrition, my workouts, having a regiment of cardio, and then in February of 2019, starting my first prep to do my first bodybuilding show, I really think that I changed more mentally than I ever did physically. That person to hold you accountable and keep you in check. That's what I needed. That was basically what my sponsor did in AA. They kept me accountable. They kept me in check. If I had a problem, I went to them. So the same sort of thing happened with bodybuilding. If I had a problem, I went to that coach. If I was struggling with something, I had someone to go talk to. And I don't think I realized before how much sometimes you need that third party to go talk to, someone who knows you, but someone who knows a different side of you. I had a different relationship with my coach. My coach was someone that I went to for, my workouts and my diets. But if I was having a bad day mentally, that affected my workouts in the gym. That affected, my stress level, affected the way that my scale went or the way that I felt when I woke up the next morning. And if I felt like crap and I didn't want to go to the gym, I wasn't talking to, my mom about it or a friend about it because they weren't really into fitness. I was going to my coach about it. And I wasn't the only person that was struggling with things like this. So he had been here before. He had seen people go through this stuff, and it was nice to have someone that kind of got it. He might not have fully gotten the anxiety, depression side of things, but he got the mental aspect and push of the gym, and that's what I needed. I needed someone that understood it, but also someone that was a third party that could kind of look into my world and give me an outsider's perspective that wasn't so connected to me. I think sometimes when the people closest to us want to help us, or we try to confine things in them, I think sometimes they tell us either what we don't want to hear because they're just bluntly honest and it might hurt. And then I think sometimes when they don't want to hurt us and they don't want to step on our shoes, they sugarcoat it and fluff it up and make it seem like it's all this happy-go-lucky and it's great, it's going to be fine. When really it's not. And then outsider perspective can kind of give you that happy medium balance of a little fluff, but with a little tough love. And sometimes that's just what you need. And it helped. That structure kept me focused. I knew if I wanted to compete in bodybuilding, I couldn't drink. I mean, I could, but it was going to hinder my progress. So it was a great way to also keep me sober. One, I still had the interlock in my car, so like I wasn't supposed to be drinking anyways. But two, like I wasn't supposed to be drinking while I was training. Like alcohol just limits your muscle growth, etc. So I knew that was going to inhibit my training, and I'm working so hard for this goal, so why would I want to regress on that goal? So that kept me accountable to my sobriety as well. And then I kind of started to fill that void. My depression and anxiety became a little less. I started to find like joy through fitness. My endorphins started flowing. I felt better about myself. I felt like there was something I was working towards, and I felt accomplished. Like I walked into the gym for a workout and I left feeling good. Like it's kind of hard to explain. You almost get on like this exercise high, like your endorphins are flowing and your energy levels up, and like you get a dopamine spike basically, and like I was like excited. Like I left and I felt good, and I started to like the way I looked better than the way I looked and felt before. Plus I was eating better. So like all the crap that I was putting in my gut before was definitely not making my anxiety, my depression any better. Like your gut has so much to do with your chemical makeup in your body and the signals that get sent to your brain. And like a lot of times we don't realize that. We don't correlate like food with our mental health aspect of things because it's just not really talked about together. But when you're throwing in all this junk in your diet, you know, your brain is taking in different signals, or your body's fighting off different things because it's like food that doesn't really make you feel good and inflames your body, makes you kind of feel like crap in other ways. And then that also then mentally makes you feel like crap, and emotionally makes you feel like garbage because you're like, well, I feel like crap. Like, why? And then that guilt comes in of like, well, I just ate like a bag of Doritos. So like, no wonder, like, you fat ass, you feel like crap. And then I'm like, oh, I'll just go back on the treadmill. So it's like this constant fight in my head of like, well, you did this, so now your repercussion is this. And I think a lot in my stage of anxiety and depression, like I fought with myself. If I had a bad day, like my repercussion was like, well, you have a bad day, so like instead of taking it out on the people around you, you're just gonna go drink. Or instead of like getting frustrated and like snapping at the person close to you, like, well, why don't you just go take the pain away by like causing yourself more pain? And essentially that's what I did. Like if I was having a bad day or I felt like something was my fault, I just totally internalized all of that, and then I took it out on myself, whether it was the drinking or the self-harm or just like shutting everyone down and out and like just being in my own little hole. I internalized it. Like I didn't want to put that on anyone else because I already felt like it was all my fault. And I think with fitness, like it showed me that like whatever I put in was what I got out. So when I put things into life before, I never felt like I got out of it what I put into it. And maybe I was never putting in enough effort, or maybe I was always holding my expectations so high and then falling so short that like I was like, well, wow, like you don't got this. You can't make it. And that voice inside my head was awful. Like it was negative. I didn't know how to be positive. That wasn't in my makeup at that point. And with fitness, I started to gravitate towards that. What I put in and the effort I put in and the amount of work that I put in and the meals that I ate and like how hard I trained, it started to pay off because I could start seeing the results. And I was like, wow, maybe there is this something to like, you know, the effort you put in is the effort that you get back out. Like it shows it. It doesn't happen overnight, but you start to show it and you start to see it, and it's like, wow, there's something to this. Like maybe this is how you apply like things to life. Who knew? You know, you put in 110% effort, and it's not just for like a day or 2 days. Like you might have to put 110% effort in for like 3 years before you start to see that 100% effort returned. And that's okay. But I think a lot of us give up after like a month or 2 months because we just get so into our own heads of like, well, I'm not good enough. At least I know I did. Um, I was so convinced that like I wasn't good enough, or I didn't have what it took, or I just wasn't cut out for this, or like that's just not me. Like I'll never be this or that or them. And I a lot of times, I don't think I know, I compared myself to others so much. And going back to the like low self-esteem and lack of self-confidence is where that came from. Just the comparison to other people, or what they had that I didn't, or like, oh, must be nice, this, that, and that whole like victim mentality of like poor me, poor me. And I lived in that for a while, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know at the time, like I didn't know what victim mentality was. I just thought it was like, I don't know. I just was in my, sorry, I'm getting cold. I didn't realize that that was like a thing. I didn't realize that that's how I thought or felt. Like, it was just like, I'll never be there. And it was just that negative little voice in my head that just kept saying like, you don't have it. You're not good enough. You're not going to be there. You're never going to get to where she is, or you're never going to hit this goal or that goal. And I just constantly tore myself down. And then drinking built me back up. But it wasn't healthy. So as I slowly started to diverge into other options, like at this point, drinking wasn't an option anymore. So fitness started to then build me back up. So instead of feeling like I wasn't enough, like I could go into the gym and I could push myself as hard as I pushed myself the week before. So then it was me versus me. I was comparing myself to others less. I still do it sometimes. It's a hard habit to break. I would try to match, my weight from the week before, or hit the same reps or something like that. And I was able to challenge myself for myself. I didn't feel like I was competing against everyone else. And before that, I felt like I was competing against everyone else. I felt like I had to be like better than this person, or better than this, or I had to, be better than my siblings to like prove to my parents that like I wasn't such a fuck up that, threw her life away because she got a DUI and she had a drinking problem and this and that. And like, it wasn't for myself. I was trying to prove everyone else wrong. And like, honestly, who knows what they even thought about me? Who knows what they even said behind closed doors? I have no fucking idea. I never asked them. I never was like, hey, like, am I like, have you written me off? Like, at this point, no, I was still living at home. It's not like they totally threw me out. Like, well, you're on your own. Nice job. Like, you fucked up. You're out. But I felt like that. Like, internally, I held it all in of like, well, this is on you. Like, you're the, like, and it was all on me. But I was constantly worried about like, well, what do they think about me? And like, am I making them proud yet? Or, have I dug myself out of the hole that I just put myself in? And I was doing it for everyone else. And when it got to fitness and it came to my first coach, I was finally doing something for me. And it wasn't something that everyone agreed with, but it was something that I wanted to do. And I was set out to like step on stage and I'm going to do this. And I did it. And it was a whirlwind of an experience. And I beat myself up a lot afterwards for the things that I messed up on, the things that I should have practiced more on, should have taken more accountability for. And it was one of those things where like, it was like, oh, it'll be fine. Or like, I'll practice a little bit and then it'll get better. And then it was one of those things where like, I am very hard on myself. So I get very frustrated when I'm not good at something. I don't like not being good at things. I like being in control and I like being good at things. So when I'm not, I get very frustrated. And that frustration turns into like anger and sadness and like all of that combined into one. And that was something that I had to deal with and cope with. And like, okay, how are you going to fix this for the next time then? This is all under my control. This is all in my scope of control. There were a lot of things out of my scope of control, like, the other girls I was competing against and everything else. But like, my meals, my workouts, and like my posing, which I could all practice and I could execute every single day, were all in my scope of control. So I had to learn to control what I could control and the other stuff to just let go of. it's something I still struggle with. There's things that you'll never be able to control. Other people's emotions, other people's impersonations of you or impressions of you, other people's actions. Like, you can control your own emotions, you can control your own impressions of people. Like, you set the tone in how you first meet someone, or how someone first impresses or unimpresses you, and you can set the tone of that relationship. But you are one person and you cannot control everyone else. And I think as alcoholics go, and anxiety and depression, I feel like sometimes we feel like we're so out of control of our whole life that when we do get control, or as we're gaining control, we feel like we need to control everyone and everything around us. And it's literally impossible. You will drive yourself crazy. And I did it in relationships. Like, if I, didn't have, I don't want to say it was controlling. Maybe I was. But like, I felt like I could control as much as I could. So I would try to like put myself into everything. Like, I would do everything I possibly could for that person to just control my entire life around them and for them. So it wasn't necessarily for myself, it was for them, because I had this like internal guilt and feel of like, well, you owe it to them. But like, what do I really owe to anyone? Like, instead, what do I owe to myself? And so I think through all those years, I was constantly putting everyone else in front of me. And then my own feelings and my own expressiveness just kind of got pushed back and back and back until I didn't know who I was anymore, until it just all fell apart and all fell down. And it's something I still struggle with today. I find it very hard to make myself a priority. I find it much easier to like, put my dog first, put my boyfriend first, put my clients first. I have no problem saying yes. Like, I'm a yes person. Like, people pleaser, just slap it across my forehead. And it's never really like benefited me. Not that you should be like out there to always benefit yourself, but like, in the world of not setting boundaries, you will just end up hurting yourself more. It takes away from, my own livelihood and my own goals and admirations when I just say, okay, yes, sure, I'll fit this in, or yeah, I got that, no problem. And I think that comes from years of feeling like unneeded and unloved and unwanted. Whether it really was or not, or it was all in my head, at this point, I have no idea. It could go either way. But in so many prior relationships, whether it be friendships, whether it be guys I dated, whether it be relationships with my family, I always felt like I was grasping for like that love. Like, I needed that feeling of like they needed me. I needed to feel needed. I needed to feel like I don't know what the words are. I needed to feel needed. I needed to feel wanted. I needed that like I can't live without you type feeling. And I feel like it's something that I searched for, and I never found it. I feel like growing up, it was like a constant like thought in the back of my head, like I'm not enough. And that not enough feeling transpired into relationships, transpired into school. And instead of trying to like push through that not enough, I just let it eat me up inside. And I would tell myself like, well, this is why they did this. Or like, well, if you had done this, maybe X, Y, and Z wouldn't have happened. So instead of realizing what I could control, I let my outside factors control me. So like, you know, getting cheated on, instead of like, well, maybe they did something, I fully and totally blamed myself. And maybe it was my fault, maybe it wasn't my fault. But at the time, that little piece like ate at me a little bit more. You know, quitting my job for someone else who then ultimately I ended everything. But like, I thought making that sacrifice was going to make it better. And then when it didn't, I was like, well, you just threw away your dream career for what? Like, and then I would internalize that because I wasn't going to talk to anyone about it because I couldn't. I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to explain to people, like, well, maybe I regret this decision and now I'm unhappy, but the people around me and the people I'm close with right now are happier. So like, I'm just going to suck it up and I just need to, like, I need to put on a happy face and I need to just be happy. And it's not a great way to live. Don't be happy for the people around you just because they're happy. You need to be happy for you. And going back into now, like, it's something I struggle with. You know, it's great to be happy and celebratory for the people around you, but you have to truly internally be happy for yourself as well. You have to love yourself first. It's something that I struggled with for a while. You know, you can give all you want to the people around you, but like, what are you giving to yourself? What's that internal dialogue with yourself? Is it happy? Are you building yourself up? Are you giving yourself these affirmations of like, I'm great, I can do this, I got this, I'm going here, I'm doing this, or are you like, you don't got this, you're a piece of shit, you don't have what it takes, you're never gonna make it? Like, that dialogue sits with you, and it sits with you for a while, and it starts to change the way you approach life, the way you approach events, the way, you know, you approach a first date, or you move forward in a relationship. It all starts to, it's all affected by that little voice inside your head telling you, you got this or you don't. And I even catch myself sometimes now being like, you know, you got to flip that switch. You can't let that little voice, you know, that little mean voice in your head pull you back. You just got to push through it. You got to get past it and move on. And for a while, it pulled me back in. It was hard for me to keep pushing forward and keep moving forward. I'm not someone that does well with like tough love. I feel like that goes back to like my needing that happy balance. And when the people around me show emotion in that way, it triggers me. When I try to have conversation with someone close to me and they're just kind of silent, or even in like a joking manner, but someone close to me like throws a little jab there, like that brings up so much internalized resentment, I guess would be the word, for my past and things that had happened before, of like bad communication and people that like talked down to me, but like not in a joking way, like meant to hurt me, because that's how they were. That's the kind of people that they were. And that's the kind of people I surrounded myself with, because I felt like that's the way I deserved to be treated. And looking back now, I know I deserve to be treated better than that. But it's hard for me to work through that. It's hard for me to take it as a joke now and just like accept it or brush it off and move on. I internalize it a little bit still. And I still have like a little bit of a hard time in being like, okay, I'm stronger than this. Like, my skin's thicker than this now. Like, I'm not the girl that I used to be. I can work through this. And that goes then with like the comparisons of like, you know, social media is a great example of like, you see these trainers or people or girls or women, whatever, whoever online, and you're like, well, how are they doing that? Why can't that be me? And instead of thinking like, why me, you have to flip that up to be like, how can I do that? And sometimes on those like my anxious days, or like where I'm just kind of feeling blah and like I'm in my own head, I'm thinking about like where I thought I'd be by this point in my life and where I'm not at this point in my life. And like, you only have control over so much. And sometimes that's really hard for me to admit. And I fall into this like hole of like that negative self-talk comes back and that self-doubt comes creeping back in. And I can find myself like really digging myself back into that rabbit hole of like, you know, you're not going to do it, or you're not going to make it there. And then I kind of have to like pull myself out and have that realization of like, you're bigger than this, you're better than this, and you can do this. And it's like that little pump me up, like, I got this, I can move forward thing. But it happens sometimes. It's probably once a week, honestly. I say sometimes, like it's not that often. And it's something that I'm still working on. It's something that I'm still working through. And it's been, years of that negative self-talk that I can't just flip it off. I'm sure some people can, and that's awesome. And I'm sure there's people that have a harder time than me with it. And all I can tell you is just keep going, keep trying. Write yourself little sticky notes. I used to post like motivational quotes on the back of my phone just to like give me a reminder. So when I opened my phone, I had like something to look at to be like, okay, I got this. And like, it sounds silly, but like sometimes it helps. It's just that little reminder of like, no, you can do this. You can power through this. You can do this. And slowly but surely you'll start to come out of that. Like, I don't know if you guys can see it. If you're on the computer, you can. The semicolon on my finger means your story isn't over yet. I got this years ago. I don't even remember when I got it. But I wanted it on my finger so that it was like a constant reminder of like, I'm not done. I'm not out of the game. My story's not over. I'm still in this. And even now, it's just that constant reminder that it's always there. Some days I forget it's there. Some days I look down and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still here. And it's those tiny little things that, it's just that little reminder of like how far you've come, where you're going, and that you're still here. You're still doing it. You're controlling what you can control, and you're working through this. I push out the people, so on those bad days, I still push away the people that are closest to me, because they see me the most. So like they know my emotions, they know my reactions, they know everything better than, a stranger or like an acquaintance of mine. So they know when I'm off, and I know when I'm off, and I still don't like talking about it. So I still, if I'm just having a day and I'm just like in a funk and I'm just in my own head, overthinking work or life and where I want to be, or an upcoming challenge or something that I'm planning on running, I can start to fight myself in my own head. And instead of like vocalizing that, sometimes I just internalize it. And then I start to realize like, a day might go by, but then it's like, you need to come out of this. You can't sit in this hole for 7 days. And so my times in my hole are less. Some days there are a couple minutes and I either make a post about something that I'm struggling with because I think it is just beneficial to me to like get it off my chest. And I also then hope that it helps someone else who's going through the same thing or has once gone through the same thing realize that like they're not the only person that has bad days. We can say we all have good days all the time, which is great. We should. Like that's a great mantra and like affirmation to have. But shitty days happen. It's how you come out on top of it. It's how you push through it that makes it a good day at the end, instead of just letting that bad day or bad mentality take you out for the entire day. So posting, like that helps sometimes, and just get on my story and essentially vent or like talk about where I'm at, or like I said, make a post about it. And that can sometimes just help me put it out there, and I don't necessarily have to talk to like any one person about it, because like I said, sometimes just talking to people, I'm expecting to get a certain answer, or like I know what I need someone to say to me, but like they are going to say whatever they want to say. Like they're not necessarily going to say what I think I need to think, or yeah, what I think or want to hear. And so maybe what they say is actually going to make me feel worse than I already do. So sometimes just putting it out just in like random form on social media just helps to like get it off my chest, but I'm not internalizing more stuff when I get feedback from someone that like wasn't quite what I asked for. Now like when you post it to social media, you're throwing yourself to the wolves. So like people could say whatever they want. However, I feel like when it's a random stranger giving me a tip, I take it less personally than when it's like someone that's related to me or like someone I live with. And if that doesn't work, sometimes I'll journal. I'm not great about it. I should be better about it. I do find that writing and like that form of communication is probably like the easiest way for me to communicate. So if I'm really struggling, or if I'm really, really in my own headspace and I just can't get out of it, I'll journal. Or I'll do like a voice memo on my phone and just kind of like brain dump. I got that from one of my mentors. It's just kind of like get everything out there, everything and anything that's on your mind. Just like throw it out, voice memo into your phone, and just get it off your chest. Like sometimes it just helps to just put it out into the universe. Like you just get it out and get it away from you. Sometimes you just need that. And sometimes I need that way to communicate with other people. I've written my parents letters before when I didn't know how to communicate with them, but I wanted to share something with them, but I wasn't quite sure like how to approach it or how to share with them, because I didn't think they would understand, or I was afraid of the response I was going to get from them. And I just knew I couldn't handle, like, if it wasn't a sugar-coated, fluffed up response that I wanted, I knew I would just mentally not be able to deal with that. So I'd write them a letter. And this was, 4 or 5 years ago. And now I do the same thing sometimes. Not necessarily to my parents, but to like, my loved ones. If there's something that like I'm just in my own head about and I just don't really know how to like explain it in words, because sometimes it's hard to get those words out. Sometimes it's hard to communicate what you're feeling in words so that someone else understands how you're feeling, or to put it like come across as not like mean, or you don't want to put them down, but like this is how I'm feeling, but like I also don't want my tone to be bad, or I don't want my voice to get raised too much because I don't want to offend them either. So sometimes I'll just write. There's nothing wrong with writing a letter. And sometimes I feel like that's the easiest way for me to communicate, because then, we either talk it out after or they write me one back, but it's a way of communication where I feel like the tone's set differently because it's a letter. So you can read into it as much as you want, or you can just take it, word for word. And it gives the other person time to process, and then it also gives you time to process afterwards. I feel like sometimes when you start talking to with either friends or family or loved one, like you start talking it out. And I feel like sometimes the back and forth, you forget that there are points that you wanted to talk about until afterwards. Or sometimes maybe they're not as I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like they're not as receiving as you want them to be, I guess. Like they're not as open to that conversation, or they don't have much to say back. And then you kind of sit there in your own thoughts of like, okay, well, I just opened up about everything I was feeling. I just word vomited everything that's been in my head, everything. Like, I just put it all out there. And then for them to be like, okay, you're like, what? Like, why did I just open up to you? Like, but everyone deals with that differently. Everyone communicates emotions differently. And sometimes talking isn't everyone's way of communicating. So I have found that writing or journaling or writing a letter can be a great way to communicate with someone that either, doesn't love communicating themselves, or you're having trouble of how you want to get your words across. And so, a letter, you can kind of jot things down. You can even do a draft and then add and then do a final. I don't do that. I just let it all out. Maybe it's bullet points of just things like here's what's going on. Here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm pushing you away. And it also lets those people in closest to you because, you can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. But when you're trying to help yourself and you're trying to better yourself, if the people around you are supporting you, which they should be, and they love you, which I'm sure they do, they want to help you. But in order to do that, you also have to let them in and you have to let them help you. And sometimes that means, communicating about things that we don't really want to communicate, or talking, about sensitive topics, or writing about them to just help those people better understand what you're going through and what's going on with you. Because there are people out there that don't suffer from anxiety or depression or mental health issues, and they might not know what it's like. They might not have any idea what's going on in your head, that you're overthinking every scenario of how, this new job's going to play out or this move's going to play out. They might just be like, oh, this is what it is. And to them, it's a simple step. And to you, there's like 500 scenarios plus 20 other steps in between. And like, they might have no idea what that's like in your head as you just like spin around in a zillion little circles. So trying to explain this to someone who's never felt like that is difficult. But not explaining it to them is more difficult, because then it causes strain on your relationship, it causes strain on your friendships, and it makes it harder for those people to help you or to support you when they don't really know what's going on and how to help you, weed through, make your way through this process. So communication is huge. It's something I work on. It's something I'm struggling with. This is a great way for me to also communicate, I think. Putting your stories out there and just kind of letting it all just, be out there. It helps you get more honest with yourself. It helps you realize in other aspects of your life of like things you need to work on more, things you're maybe neglecting. So communication also helps me cope. I might put that wall up real quick right away when I'm having a stressful day or a high anxiety day. But as I slowly lower that wall down and slowly let the people in around me, I start to feel a little bit better. That weight and pressure feels like it's lifted off my shoulders, and I'm able to do a little bit more because I'm able to help myself by helping others a little bit more. Working out, I'm sure you saw this one coming, also helps. That like endorphins, dopamine raise, like that stuff just makes me feel good. I've had days where like I don't want to go to the gym. I've had days where I've gone to the gym and I've turned around and I've left because I just didn't feel like going. Like I just couldn't be too many people for that day. Like 2 people late for me. Can't do it. And I have to say that hasn't happened in a couple years. I can't not say though that I haven't like gone to the gym with my headphones on and my hood up and been like, crying in the corner over by the weights when like, I'm just shit hit the fan. But I still walked out of there feeling better than I walked in. Losing a couple family members over the last 2 years was tough. I was pretty close with my one aunt, and I knew she was sick. I just didn't know she was that sick. And she was a big supporter of my bodybuilding journey. She helped me afford my first show. She was my biggest cheerleader. And I didn't think it was going to end that soon. But like it kept going. The day after I found out, I went to the gym because I knew she wouldn't want it any other way. And why emotionally I was a wreck inside, I knew it was going to help me. So like, blasting my music on the way to the gym and just basically screaming my lungs out. It helps release that emotion. It helps me, feel like I'm just letting it all out. Sometimes I just drive around listening to music anyways. And that alone can just start to change my mood, make me feel a little bit better. And sometimes that's all it takes. It used to be a half-hour drive. Maybe it's a 5 or 10-minute drive now. But it's way healthier than drinking. It's way better for me than eating a pint of Ben& Jerry's, taking a fat burner, and go living on the stair machine. And it helps still. And it makes me feel less guilty. I don't feel, as guilty when I go blast music and drive around in the car, or I actually go in for a workout and have a better workout than I did the day before, because my emotions were so high that I just let all my frustration, all my anxiety, I just left it on the gym floor and I walked away from it. And it's not to say that it won't be back the next day, but I found healthier coping mechanisms, and they've helped me progress forward more. And they still work. I still work through it. I still have days, but I've found better ways to do it. And then in turn, I'm now able to share more about my personal journey. Before I was so in my own head of who's going to listen to me? What do I have to say? I don't know anything. I'm not this, that, and anything else. And now it's no, I'm making it on the other side. I've overcome my dark, dark days, and I've worked through them, and I've found better ways to cope. And I'm still working on them. It's still a work in progress. My communication with, friends, family, loved ones is still something that I need to work on. It's something that I need to improve upon. And it's one of those, my quickest response is to just put my wall up. Because to me, that's my safest place. I'm safe behind my little wall in my little hole. And it'll slowly, it comes down quicker. And then that communication comes into play. And it's okay, well, here, I might not talk to anyone for an hour. But then when I do, I start to tell people, hey, this is what was actually going on. So the next time, maybe they'll know, or maybe it won't happen next time, because maybe I was really just in my own head, and it had nothing to do with anyone around me other than the own thoughts in my own head. And sometimes that's the case. And then next time it's okay, maybe that thought comes back up. So then when it happens again, you remember that and you realize, oh wow, maybe I didn't need to react that way. Maybe my wall didn't need to go up so quick. Maybe that workout made me feel better than anything else did that day. So maybe that's what I need to go do the next time, this blast from the past creeps up, or someone, something someone says, or something that happens, triggers something from before that, would have sent me down a deep, dark rabbit hole. And there's never any really, each little aspect of that, communication, going and doing something active. Some days I just take the dog to the park. Some days I just feel overwhelmed and I'm just going to take the dog for a walk. I could have a million other things to do, and I'll take the dog to the fucking park. Because it makes her feel good, and it makes me feel better. And when I come home, I feel like I'm reset. I feel like I'm grounded. And we all need to find that grounding piece. Some people fight through stress. I try to. I can't fight through all of it. I think sometimes I'm more anxious than stressed, and it wears me down. It takes my energy away. And then I'm grumpy when I train clients. I can't be my happy-go-lucky little cheerleader because I'm somewhere else. And that's not fair. That's not fair to anyone around you. You gotta find the ways that help you stay grounded. So, experiment. Try journaling. Try writing a letter to that friend or that family member that maybe you lost touch with because you just didn't agree with their, the way that they're living life, or maybe you're moving on and they're, maybe they were with you in your party days and now they're still partying, but you're trying to move on and be better, and you don't know how to tell them I can't do this anymore. Or maybe it's a significant other in your life that things are not as great as they seem, but you don't know how to communicate that because you're afraid of hurting someone. But aren't you hurting them already if you're not communicating at all? So try to communicate, write that letter, jot down some bullet points before you have a conversation. Try to help both, everyone involved, whether it's a friendship, a business, relationship, like we all can communicate more. And, if you're still struggling, go for a drive in your car, go jam out, take the dog to the park, go find some nature, go do a cold plunge in like some crazy creek in the middle of, the woods. Just make sure you're smart about it and like you have warm, dry clothes for afterwards. Sometimes that's a great way to just like feel better and just branch out, go do something crazy like that. I did a cold run in Utah, maybe 2 months ago now, a month ago. It was insane. I was in my own head the whole time. And then partway up that mountain, my little inner voice switched and it went from being like, you don't got this to like, fuck yeah, you got this. You're making it to the top. And let me tell you what, that was a crazy experience, but that like out of body forced me to like, all right, you either like, you're going back and like this little voice is taking you down, or you're pushing her over and you're getting it. And I pushed her over and I got it. And for a couple weeks after that, I was like, yeah, this little inner voice is done. I don't like that negative self-talk's out of here. And then it slowly creeps back up. So you got to find a way to knock it back down, to push yourself back up. Write daily affirmations. Is something I keep saying I'm going to do, and I haven't. I have a couple friends that do it, and they put sticky notes on like mirrors or on their car or something, and it's just like a little reminder of something that you do, something that you're going to do for that day, the week, whatever it may be, or goal you have. Just put it out into the universe. So my challenge to you this week, or over the next 2 weeks, because I'm doing these every 2 weeks right now, open up that communication, find out if journaling helps you, write that letter, go get out in nature, go sit out in the sun for a little bit. Maybe you just need some, vitamin D, no phone, no computer, no social media, and like just soak up some sun and feel good. Start to change that little self-talk voice in your head, when you find yourself saying something negative, like try to think about what's going on around you. Try to think about if it's something that triggers you, and I try to see if it's like the environment that I'm on. Was I on my phone before this started? And then where do I go afterwards? And why does this start to creep back up when I'm doing X, Y, or Z? Maybe you need less X, Y, or Z if that's when that little voice is creeping back up. And then how do you work through that and help it flip around to be more positive and be more affirmative and talk yourself back up instead of pulling yourself back down. A lot of us are our own worst enemies and our own worst critics, and we're harder on ourselves than anyone else. So it's something that we all have to work on. It's all something we could all be better on. I know I can definitely improve upon it. But I hope you guys got something out of this. I hope you picked up some ways that you can start coping. Whether it's getting active, soaking up some sun, maybe yoga or meditation's not really my thing, even though it probably would be super beneficial to me. I have a very hard time like sitting there in my own quietness. Something to work on. Getting comfortable being uncomfortable. When we're uncomfortable, we normally grow and we, push ourselves to limits that like we know we're capable of, even though sometimes we don't think we're capable of. So try something new. Try a new coping mechanism. Give some of these things a try. I hope they help. Power through. You've got this. There's healthier ways than, binging or drinking or diving into other unhealthy ways to deal with your anxiety. Go talk to your therapist, go talk to a friend, go talk to a family member, and open up that chain of communication. Get those endorphins flowing, get that vitamin D in, go get active. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Until then, please like and subscribe. Reach out if you ever need to talk or you have any questions. I will include all my socials in the description, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks so much for listening again.